Welcome to the Ultimate Bloons TD6 strategy series, where I'm going to be showing you strategies for every single tower from the Dart Monkey to the Beast Handler and every single path in between. This will show you how to diversify your setup and get better, along with seeing some stats, tips and tricks, and all of the strategies for every single one of the towers. And although that the series is geared more towards Chimps mode, this will also show you a lot of tips and tricks that apply to the standard game and will allow you to win with a new style.
If you're particularly looking for a new style, maybe you should check out the Moab Domination, because he definitely has some style. Anyways, we're going to be looking at the Moab Domination path, along with the Moab Press and the Kylie Boomerang, which are the tier 3 and tier 4, so let's get right into it. The Kylie Boomerang is an early game tower. It has good pierce and good damage, very unique tower that we'll look at later. The Moab Press has ZOMG and PFB stalling potential, very common support tower, and then the Moab damage is late game heavy damage. So let's take a look at all of these guys. So the stats on these are actually pretty interesting. They're all pretty different in many ways. This guy's actually not that bad in the early game, very underrated. And then the Moab Press, the big thing is that he can push back the Moabs fairly well for a very cheap price, and the Moab Domination is kind of like a combination of the two. It just does a lot of damage, has good pierce, and can push back the Moabs pretty well, even for the tier 5, as it's doing a lot of damage. So let's look at the cross paths. Very simple here. You always go for the middle two. In the previous update, the Moab Press was different, where you either go 204 or 024, but due to a change, it's now just always 024. So nothing too complicated. 023, 024, 025. The attack speed is just always better. You can be shooting way faster and doing a lot more damage. So that is the cross paths, and now let's take a look at some of the buffs that you might want to give it. So when it comes to the support or buffs, the tier 3, you're going to have this guy in the early game starting out. He's probably not going to have anything. For the tier 4, you're probably going to have a drum somewhere in your setup. At least drums are primary training. You're typically going to be getting that guy later because it's a support tower. But for the tier 5 Moab Dominations, you're going to want a Berserker Brute on him, primary training, and then an overclock. So all of these guys, they're coming up soon. They're just going to be increasing the damage of it by a lot. For the Berserker Brew, increasing the attack speed, pierce, just overall all of the stats. The primary training is going to be giving it range, more attack speed from the drums, more pierce, and the overclock is just going to be ramping its attack speed up. This is going to just heavily increase the damage, and it's going to become absolutely insane, and this will give it enough power to really take out all of the late game. And it's effective on maps with lots of straights, the bends, and the overlaps, like here on Streambed, because you're going to want that projectile. It moves straight down and then bounces back. So if you can get overlaps, it's going to be doing really well. And because the tier 4 is pretty much a support tower that gets its shine in the late game, you're going to need pretty much a full, very heavy mid-game carry all the way into the Moab Domination. So when you bring your hero is going to be based around what your mid-game is. Because once we got the Moab Domination, there's going to be no worry about that. You just need the hero to get you there. So some key aspects is the Moab Domination late game and supporting your defense with Moab Presses in the late game too. So we're going to be checking out both of this. First here, we're going to be doing a Moab Domination run here on Bazaar. And I'm going to be bringing Rosalia, because for the mid-game carry, we're going to be doing a Spectre. So we're going to have a Rosalia Spectre synergy that will allow me to get a very, very cheap Spectre, which will in turn get our Moab Domination a lot cheaper here too. So as I said, you can do the Kylie Boomerang in the early game. This map may not be typically the best, but it will still work out. Sometimes you might have to get a little more just because this is a bit harder. So I get a crossbow there to deal with the camos. You also need something to deal with the camos. And then I'm going to get my hero down early, and now I can start working on the boomerang. Sometimes you'll just be able to immediately start working on the boomerang. That's totally a valid option. You can do that too if you can. Just here I wasn't quite able to. But as you notice, it goes through the straight line and will bounce back, and it does a lot of damage. Very good for its price, something that you don't really see a lot. But now I'm going to get Rosalia and start going for my ace. So one thing that you'll notice somewhere in here, I don't think was shown in here, but in the early game, like one red slipped by. That wasn't according to my plan, and I had to place a dart monkey, and that kind of threw my plan off a little bit, and I was like a few dollars short of getting my camo village on round 42. With this, just there's no camo, so I would have had to watch out for that, and I didn't really take that into account when I was buying my alk. I could have skipped out on this cross path and gotten it later. Round 40 is pretty fine with this combination, so I had to do an emergency purchase. It did save the black border, but I got like an 032 dart at the bottom just to save it real quick. If you're refining your black border, you definitely want to make sure that, like right there, that you get some of those weeds out, but that's just something that's in this recording, and I didn't really want to restart the whole thing, so keep that in mind. That was typically isn't part of the plan, but the strategy is still pretty good. Just make sure you get your camo village up before round 42. This alk buff never miss. You can get it really early with Rosalia's discount. Very effective. It should go straight into the Spectre. You might have to use an ability, like the abilities on round 40 are very good. Using the barrage and the jetpack, it will just take out the Moab. Very effective. You get the Spectre, and now you're good. So because we only really get a Moab press for the tier 4 of this guy, there's just like no damage going straight to the tier 5. So we're gonna have the Spectre pretty much do all of the work. And when you have Rosalia and it's cheap, you should just have the money budgeted right for that. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be free for pretty much like a lot of the maps. Once you get the harder maps, or Spectres will start like trailing and falling off on things. Maybe it won't work, but for most all of your maps, into like pretty much a good chunk of the advanced maps, this will work just fine. There's also a bunch of other mid-game options that you could do, mid-game carries that are very strong and effective, that'll bring you to the full 54k needed for this Moab Domination. So those will also work too. You'll see a strategy with that later. I think I used Oben with some druids. Pretty cool strategy in my second example, but there's a bunch that you can do too. It's not just limited to that. And even with the two mishaps, having to buy that extra 032 dart and 000 dart, I'm still going to be able to afford it just fine. Going into round 80, I'm going to be getting this mid to late round 80, and then the damage will just be insane. The Spectre and Rosalia will also be doing a lot of damage throughout the rest of this run, so it may not really be the best of the showcases. There's one thing to note, and I did mess up my placements a little bit. I was planning on getting an alk between the village and then a relentless glue in between that, so the relentless glue with camo. Unfortunately, it didn't get that, so I think round 99 came more close than I'd reasonably planned because the relentless glue couldn't hit the DDTs. So that is one thing to note. You need to get something. Well, relentless glue obviously is very strong overall, so you probably get that in the late game anyways, along with the primary training, the berserker brew, and the overclock that I talked about. That increases damage, but just to watch out for some of the DDTs, because it can be a little bit weak to DDTs. It's typically better against the heavier rounds like 98, so I just grab Sabo and the relentless glue, which should have been able to hit the camos. But other than that, we're doing pretty good. And on round 100, I typically recommend just buy like a first strike or a spike storm if it's going to work out there well too. But anyways, we're going into the 90s, 96 here, the 97's coming up. Everything's just going out fine. In fact, the Bloons typically aren't, like at least most of them aren't even getting into range of the Moab Domination, which is just kind of crazy. It is a very, very powerful tower and will just eliminate a lot of these heavy rounds. It also has pretty good Moab, well, single target damage, so it does alright against the bat, especially when you have the overclock up. As you can see here, I had to clutch this up because that's from the Relentless not being able to see it. But on round 100, typically here you'd probably want to get a first strike to clean up the insides. This was a bit risky doing this. I would not recommend doing this in a black border, especially if you have 35k spare, but I just wanted to see it, and it was able to take out the bad, although kind of just barely. If the bad had like a little more push through it, it might have gotten through there. But yeah, it's very strong and does a lot of damage. So now let's look at the second application, and this is going to be for the Moab presses. So I have a strategy here that's very weak against Moabs, and if you need something to take out Moabs, instead of getting spending a lot of money on like a tower that does damage to do it, you can just get a bunch of Moab presses and they will push it back. So on round 97 here, we didn't quite have 2 of them yet, but now we have 2, so it got pushed back enough to deal with it. But now round 98, you're going to be definitely pushed back enough. This also works very well on the BFBs too. Once you get to the Moabs and DDTs especially, not super effective, but for the BFBs and COMGs, they're going to be pushed back very, very well with the Moab presses. Just when you do this, you need to make sure that you have something to really take out the bad, such as the 2 first strikes. Typically when you have weak ZOMG damage, you have really bad damage, so you're gonna have to keep that in mind. You can't just be spamming the hell out of presses just to beat round 98, because round 100 could beat you up unless you have something planned like I had there with the first strikes. Now let's move on to the second example of using the Moab Domination. This time it's going to be pretty much the same rules on a harder map. We're doing high finance here today. Very space like cramped, not a whole lot of space. That is something that we're gonna have to deal with definitely coming up, because I'm using druids, which typically would involve a lot of space. But a lot of people probably see like setup that goes into Avatar of Wrath. If you're familiar, a lot of people probably used Avatar of Wrath on chimps, but you get a whole bunch of druids, get them under villages, maybe a tornado druid, alch them up, and they go into Avatar of Wrath. Anyways, I'm using specifically that idea, but instead of buying Avatar of Wrath, I'm going to buy a Moab Domination, because why not? Moab Domination is 10 times cooler anyways, right? So we're going to be seeing more of the impacts of the Kylie Boomerang start here compared to my other run. You can see it's just kind of ripping the Bloons apart, and I'm also doing another thing that you may not have seen before, and that's alch buffing the Oben, which is really, really good. The main attack, it does get a decent amount of power increase from the alch buff, but mostly it's the brambles. These will, like, I don't know the exact number, but at least double, maybe triple the amount of damage that the brambles do, which is very good. I'm also doing something a bit crazy that not a whole lot of people might be comfortable doing that, but I'm just skipping camo completely and having Oben's brambles just eat whatever camos come through. Oben does give Druid's camo detection now at level 8, but you won't get that immediately, so right now all the camos are going into the brambles, just spamming the button, and it should generally work with everything. Now let's grab some of these druids. So the placements look really bad, but later on I get an ice and fill up the other spots, grab some alchs and do it pretty well. I get one tornado in the corner. The round 40 Moab is fine if you have an alch buffed Oben and you have some brambles in the back. So if you're going to replicate this generally, then just keep that in mind. You need to spam those brambles and have alch buff brambles if you want to just wipe out the Moab like I did there. Either that, or if it's longer, sometimes your druids will take it out. So just keep that in mind. Alch buff Oben is quite strong. I'm going to be reserving an alch spot for the Moab Domination just because this map has not a lot of space. It's something that I'll end up doing. And then you can see me trying to see, oh shoot, I have like no druids in here. Luckily I can buy this ice and get that all covered. Buying the ice wastes a little bit of money, but it's something that you aren't going to have to do on most maps, but here I have to do it, and it's going to be fine. Just an extra $4,000 added to the total cost, but we're going to be able to easily recoup that with the amount of power that we'll get from a druid and alchemist bundle. So just a bunch of 014 druids, 410 alchs, get everybody in their alch buff up. It's going to be crazy, and use some trees maybe and just wait, and you're going to be doing a lot of damage. So the whole crew is going to be getting set up right now. Now that I have that, we get the tree up too. You can put the tree in the back just for some safety. Just make sure that if it pops, you need to collect the money, or else you lose that money. And we can get that Moab press up too. It pushes back maybe the BFBs in the mid game a little bit. I mean, you're going for the Moab Domination, so might as well buy the upgrade and get as much support out of it as possible. It's really not the most effective though in the mid game. You really don't see anybody get like a Moab press look to deal with round 75 per se. It would be interesting to see that being done, but you've never just really seen it. It's not something that you'll see. Anyways, these rounds are getting taken out very well, and I'll just warn you, for some odd reason my recording cut out and I lost like a lot of the middle where I actually buy the Moab Domination and go into the 80s. I'll just let you know this is still powerful going into the 80s. You can go up to like 87 usually with this setup, even on these harder maps. but I got Moab Domination well before round 87. I think it was on like round 82, and then my game kept running until I died on round 93 with the Moab Domination. Anyways, from there I was planning to get my support anyways, so let's just get the support, beat everything up, and see its action in the late game. So I get my overclock, my Sabo to deal with the DDTs. If you remember, the Moab Domination is a little bit weaker to DDTs, so we need to make sure we get that Sabo. The Relentless Glue now has camo detection this time, so Relentless Glue is going to be putting in work. With all of that, you saw round 95, those DDTs were not an issue, same with round 99. I'm looking to see if I can get my first strike in here, because this map is shorter. I am going to want that first strike, and sadly I placed that sub a little bit strange, so I can't get it. I'm going to have to make do with a Spike Storm, which definitely isn't ideal. That was something that I didn't want to do, but if I have to, I guess I just have to deal with the Spike Storm. Now, the round 98 here is going to get destroyed super easy. Round 99, really only concern, make sure you have a Sabo for that. And then round 100, hopefully you would have, for a map of this length, first strike, but we're going to get by with the Spike Storm very easily. There's round 99 taken out well, and just make sure we get that overclock up. Sometimes it's good to hold the overclock for 100, especially in a situation like that, but we take it out and the rest go into the trees. So that's pretty much Moab Domination. Really cool tower, pretty crazy, and I hope you like.
Thanks for watching. If you want to help out the channel, you can check out these new videos, like and subscribe for more content, support the channel by becoming a member, and joining the Discord to chat with the community. Bye!